I call the Honourable Member Gareth Hughes.
Kia ora, Mr Speaker. Tertiary education is vital to our future prosperity and building a smart economy. I'm glad to take a call tonight on the Education Amendment Bill number 4, which amends the Education Act 1989, and I'd like to make a quick comment on the previous debate. I think David Shearer deserves an A for his analysis on the situation. Minister Joyce has a number of portfolios, but when it comes to it, he seems to have his keys on the ministerial printing press. He's got $43 million to bail out his mates at MediaWorks. He's got billions to throw, reducing competition, reducing and increasing price when it comes to ultra-fast broadband. He's got $10.7 billion to spend on motorways when we're borrowing $300 million a week. He needs to be pouring some of that into our vital tertiary education sector. I think Mr Peachey's speech, he's a well-noted educationalist, but I think if I was to grade Mr Peachey's speech, I'd say needs to do more work, needs to do his homework. It's a pretty big bill. There's lots of parts he could have spoke on, but maybe he'd get an A for his creative writing. I like the illusion of 9 long years of Labour. Some good creative writing there. And Ms Apoloni, I think if that was a history speech, she'd maybe get a C for that. I don't know if she was a student under those 9 long years of the Labour government, but I was. And what I saw was increasing fees, I saw increasing student loan burden across the whole country, and I saw interest on student loans for 6 years before it was rightfully taken off, so maybe a C for historical accuracy. But, Mr Speaker, the Green Party will be opposing this bill tonight on its first reading. We've got a mixed view on the bill. It's a grab bag of things. There's some good parts, mixed parts and bad parts. First, Mr Speaker, the good parts of the bill. The Green Party does support strengthening the regulation of private training establishments. Many PTs do fantastic work. However, the whole industry can be affected by cowboys in the market. We support establishing new rules for their registration and operation, handling back quality assurances back to NZQA, but have some grave concerns around the NZQA implementing the new New Zealand qualifications framework and listing approved qualifications and their enhanced enforcement powers. Secondly, Mr Speaker, the bill establishes a new Crown agent, Education New Zealand, to replace the functions of the 3 organisations currently managing and promoting international education as a New Zealand export earner. We're talking about New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, Ministry of Education and Education New Zealand Trust. Streamlining seems to be an ideological mantra often repeated by the national government without much actual evidence presented. And we look forward to seeing the benefits outlined in Select Committee from the merging of the 3 operations into a single agency operating under a board and accountable to the Minister. We'd like to take the opportunity to stress, when discussing international education, that a strong focus on student welfare and pastoral care is vital. Thirdly, we think it's common sense to make it easier for Ministry of Social Development to administer student allowances by giving them the power to request enrolment information from tertiary providers. They already have these powers in relation to student loans, and that they don't for student allowances seems to be a historical oversight. The bill also creates a new offence if a tertiary provider knowingly provides false or misleading information to MSD regarding the administration of loans and allowances. Then, Mr Speaker, there's the bad. The other 2 objectives in the bill are more problematic. Regarding student services fees, it's true these have increased dramatically in recent years, but not for no reason, because institutions use them to fund vital services to get around the fee maxima, which only applies to tuition fees. In short, facing inadequate funding and a further budget cuts from the Minister of Tertiary Education, it's not unrealistic new sources of income would be identified so we can keep providing a world-class education service. In the lead-up to May's budget, how will decisions being made currently or about to be made impact on our universities and polytechs? If it is a zero budget, as has been promoted, will we see yet another cut to our tertiary education budget? Already, as of last year, we spend $3,000 less per student than the OECD average, and we're in the bottom quarter for expenditure on tertiary education as a percentage of our gross domestic product. On the face of it, the Green Party supports moves to keep student fees down and believe core education services should be paid for via adequate tuition subsidies and adequate tuition fees, not via these alternative sources. The Minister seems intent on addressing the symptom, but not the cause, the fact that he won't fund tertiary education properly. We welcome increased student involvement and increased transparency. The irony, of course, is that no students will get a chance to vote on how the student levy is raised or spent as they currently do through their student association fees. The risk is the Minister will decide to limit the ability of student association fee shortfalls through the levy, leading to a situation where either student services or core services are going to be cut. Facing a recessionary environment, a stagnant economy dependent on international commodity prices, we need to follow Australia's lead, who are investing $5.7 billion extra over the next 5 years to achieve their goal of 40% of the country of Australians having degrees, and invest more in tertiary education sector, not playing student services off against core services. The bill gives us wide-ranging and extensive powers to the Minister to dictate the terms on which institutions can charge service fees, including for which services, and potentially setting dollar amounts. As with the Canterbury Earthquake Reconstruction Authority, power is being concentrated more centrally in ministerial hands. It's as if a memo has been circulated around the National Party, trying to secure as much power as they can in executive hands over the legislature or the public. In a VSM, in a voluntary student membership environment, institutions will have to pick up the tab for many services currently provided by student associations, and there is the risk this bill could constrain their ability to do so if the Minister sets strict rules. Whole services could fall through the gaps if the Minister decides so. I don't think it's good lawmaking to leave this important question up to the inclination of a particular Minister. The Minister needs to identify what categories of services will be allowed now, because it seems unlikely we could vote in further readings based on his deplorable track record in the portfolio. If a clearer framework and clarity is the policy objectives of the Minister, he should include that in the legislation, not leave it up to a future Minister's whim. Likewise, the Minister should spell out exactly how students' views will be represented effectively in the legislation. With a different Minister, change like this could be positive, but the fact it places so much power in the hands of whomever is in power is good reason to oppose the bill. Lastly, regarding NZQA and the regulation of PTEs, the changes are extensive. The changes implement recommendations by the targeted review of qualifications undertaken 2009 to 2010, which focused on the proliferation of low-quality courses. The bill establishes a new New Zealand qualifications framework which lists the approved qualifications. We look forward to finding out more in Select Committee what is likely to make it on the list of approved qualifications, because in an increasingly complex world we need to provide students with all the opportunities their creativity, their entrepreneurial skills, their social potential demands. Some elements, Mr Speaker, are concerning. For example, the fact that the NZQA is given quite draconian powers under this legislation for enforcement. For example, entering premises, accessing and copying information and questioning staff. In conclusion, some of this bill the Green Party supports, but others, like the NZQA enforcement provisions and the student levy powers, are concerning. So we may change our vote down the line, but only if the bill actually sees better tertiary education outcomes. Kia ora.